a company that runs meta search campaigns for hotels across the world. We are based in Germany, in Leipzig, and we also have a small office in Barcelona. We are roughly 60 people. And in the end, what we do is we connect hotel websites with their booking engines to Google, to Trivago, to Tripadvisor. And the main goal is really to avoid that most of you are usually visible on those platforms, but usually people can only book you or book hotels via booking.com and Expedia, so through the OTAs. And what we're trying to do is we try to cut the supply chain and put the hotel websites one step closer to the customer by connecting it straight to Google. We have our own software on doing that, and we also have a big team to support this. So yeah, we are in the business for the last 8 years, and as you said, the good thing is in today's world that by having access to platforms like Google and Trivago, we obviously have a very close inside view on recent demand, so we can exactly see how many people search for which destination, for what time, and what's going on in the internet. Unfortunately, currently it's not a lot.
Yes, this is actually one of the main set of questions that we will ask you, but thank you for the quick introduction. So let's start with the news. We have 3 news that we think interesting. We think that's interesting to share with the audience. So I think you have already seen my screen, right, guys? We are all good?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So the first news, I think I leave it to the front. So
yeah. So we were talking about some different segments of our sector before, and this is from corporate, not the corporate, but the Chinese side, Far East side of the business. So one of the, of course, the first pandemic region is China. Regarding this COVID-19 virus, and we thought about China is picking up before. So what they did was they did a survey to Chinese people, predominantly young people, and young people from 18 to 45 years of age think that they will be traveling. 90% of the people, Chinese people, 18 to 45, is planning to travel until June, which is quite
it's
nice.
It's a great news. Yeah.
Exactly.
And by the way, Fred, as far as I know, this research has been done with the association with the Trip.com, right? Because they also involved this research.
Right.
So
Trip.com is the biggest OTA in China, and they have a quite interesting data regarding this. But the interesting part was 90% of these people are planning to go domestic travel, and 41% of them is planning to use cars, not planes, not international travel, but domestic tours and car travel.
So what do you think about this, Uli? I mean, because we were foreseeing that the travel will be mostly domestic. I think this research kind of proof for that.
Yeah, I think this is in a way it's a pretty logical answer and not very surprising in my eyes. Obviously, and I think we'll see very similar responses in Europe once the travel bans are lifted. That, as a matter of fact, people want to travel, right? I mean, in any crisis, even if you look back in time, financial crisis, 9/11, even when we had the bird flu and where we had similar pandemics in the past, travel was one of the areas that recovered most quickly, right? So in a way, you cannot keep people at home. It's impossible. disposable income in these kind of things will play a role in future, maybe more because many people lose their jobs. But overall, I would expect that travel revamps quickly, and you can see in China that it already does. I also looked at several data from China, also with other companies, and yes, there is already a pickup, let's say 20 to 30% of the previous volume. Nevertheless, you need to be very, very careful basically on anything you hear out of China currently. And I would also be very careful in connecting this with potential changes to the travel behavior in Europe or from America.
Yeah,
I think
it's
in China,
one of the most important.
Yeah, and I think there are several reasons to it. First of all, in China, what we could see was a pickup, was a fast pickup to, let's say, 20 to 30% of the previous business. And then it slowed down immediately again, which is, in my eyes, a clear sign that what we can see here is a pickup that is connected directly with the pandemic, meaning that there's medical aid traveling. So there are people traveling because of Corona, not because Corona is over. And if travel would pick up overall, we would have seen a more steady increase after the 20%. It would have gone on, and currently it's stopped. Now that more and more hotels are opening up and that travel bans are lifted, we might see a higher percentage increase. And yes, you can say that almost exclusively travel is domestic. And I personally believe that this stays like that for a while. And this maybe is also partially bad news for Turkey, because obviously you guys heavily rely on international travelers coming to your country, right? And holiday
in some region, yes.
Yeah, some regions, yes. Yeah, because I believe that most of the countries will see a pickup in domestic travel first, so it's potentially the same in Turkey one day, but then international travel will still be heavily restricted to avoid Corona passing borders, which is it's a critical stage in the next month, and that might go on for another 6 months. So if you have,
by the way, Uli, just just to add something here, I believe for the last 15 years, the Turkish people really start to travel internationally. This is a trend that we've been seeing recently. So since those people will not be able to travel for abroad, I believe that those people will travel also locally. By the way, I mute everybody again, just for your info. Let's go to the second news, by the way. So, Jenner, I think it's your news.
Yeah, it's my news. Hello, everyone. We have another news for you. About 40% of companies predicted corporate travel will resume within the next 3 months, according to a new lighting poll conducted by the Global Business Travel Association. About 17% said 6 months was more realistic. However, 40% say they are unsure when travel will resume.
Yeah, this is another news. I mean, this is the biggest discussion now among everybody in the travel industry, when business be back normal. So based on this survey, like 40% believe that it will be okay in 3 months. I think 10% in 6 months, and 40% is not sure. So what do you think about this, Uli? When do you think the business will be back in normal days?
Yeah, I know that you got me here to potentially give good news, but at the same time, yeah, we need to be realistic. And I always say, you know, in good times, there's always a best and a worst case scenario. And I think in good times, you should go for the best case, but in bad times, we better orient ourselves on the worst case. Currently, we see, and especially again, Europe is different to other places, right? Because we have different political situations, different handlings of the pandemic. I personally see that that business will take between 3 and 6 months to pick up, rather than 3 months and less. I think we need to be very realistic here. There's not gonna be a pickup. Personally, in our company, we expect pickup maybe to even take 6 months and longer. Then obviously we need to look at different segments. And when we looked at the corporate segment that you were just showing, I think, again, I'm not really surprised by this poll, because there are corporates that have to travel, right? There are companies that simply are, their business relies on being able to travel. So they just have to, and they're just waiting for the lift to be banned. But then there's also companies who might say, look, we need to protect our people. The whole pandemic is not over. There might be a second and a third wave. And then there's also a recession potentially connected to it, where corporates have to save money. And so these other 40% that say, okay, we don't know, this actually is a good representation, right? Because you can see that some companies have to, and they expect to travel as soon as they can. And the other companies are like, well, okay, we might have to wait, and we might not even have the money. So again, from a hotel perspective, it depends a little bit on what kind of travelers you have. Simple example, if you are a hotel at the roadside in America, right, somewhere on the side of the street where people pass by with their car and stop for a night, I think this kind of travel will pick up at some point quickly. But if you are connected with a company and maybe you have a hotel where you have 2 or 3 or 4 big companies providing your business, you might want to look closely what kind of business these companies do. And if they are one of these companies who might restrict travel, you might be hurt. So again,
this is
a very individual situation.
Yeah, and this is very, very important point, Uli. I mean, for hotels who is listening us now, need to be realized that there will be I think, very sharp change on segments. So if any hotel is working in a segment that will not pick up after this coronavirus, they need to change their strategy. They need to start to work to change their strategy to pick up and to be on the right segment. So as you said, the travel behavior will be definitely change for next 2-3 months, and hotelier need to be ready for that. So our last news, I think it's my news. It's about the travel industry could lose 24 billion as coronavirus cripples tourism from outside US. So this is very interesting news because it makes some comparison between SARS and the 9/11. And the first point is the US travel and tourism industry could lose at least 24 billion in foreign spending this year because of the rapidly spreading coronavirus. Again, it's the same thing. It's a huge value, the revenue for tourism industry. And it's emphasized that it's a foreign spending. It's very important. So everybody is specifically telling that the local business, the local tourism will definitely increase while the foreign spending ones will decrease. So the second point is that would be equivalent to about 7 times more than the industry lost during the SARS outbreak in 2003. So, you know, if audience who attended last week's will remember that we make some comparison between the SARS time and current situation, but based on this research, the total lost comparing today to SARS will be 7 times more than according to SARS. So the last one is the figures also imply that 8.2 million lost visitors in 1 year, which would be even more than the 7.7 million international travelers lost in 2001 and 2002 after the 9/11 terrorist attacks. So these are really interesting figures that show us that the impact of this crisis. I think this crisis doesn't look like the previous one. It's one of the biggest that we are experiencing in the last maybe 50, 60 or 100 years. So what do you think, Uli, about this? You are in mute.
Okay, there we go again. So yeah, and that's exactly the part of the bad news, right? I mean, we're all trying to, of course, see some hope and see some upturns at some point. But as I said, we need to be realistic. This is gonna hurt us big time. And again, but again, and like you said, completely correctly, it's very important that you look for your segments, that you look for your target audiences, right? I mean, I think it's pretty clear to me that, for example, if you're strong in the group segment, and when you're strong in the meeting and incentive and MICE area, I think things will change even worse, right? So this segment will be hurt for a long time and potentially change. I mean, look at us, we are all on video now, so maybe one day people will now go more on video than ever, because they also find out that it works actually. And but then on the other side, there will be segments that will be better. And one segment, obviously, and that's a segment where we are active in, is obviously the whole online segment, the whole, let's say, unorganized business, unorganized leisure, and unorganized corporate business, which is predominantly happening in the online world, is maybe a segment that might even be stronger than ever. And that's where I strongly believe where hotels should look at how can they get a better access to the online world. And then, oh, someone was doing screen sharing, yeah. And one thing we need to,
someone is screen sharing, yes.
Yeah, and maybe one thing we should consider is that if we look at the online segment, the hotels should really make sure that we're not going to go into another dependency on OTAs, because after the financial crisis in 2008, many hotels were running after Booking.com and Expedia, basically because they were offering a variable cost model with commissions, right? So you didn't have to pay upfront, you could pay afterwards, you could go on a commission level, which was at that time 8%. But the problem was we all ran after them, and then 5 years later, when our business and our economy was back stable, our dependency on OTAs was so big that we all of a sudden were struggling to get out of this dependency. So my recommendation is look after the online segment, but at the same time also make sure that you have your website ready, that you get people through your own website, that you understand how to attract people directly, so you're not going into another dependency with the OTAs.
Perfect. So we finished the news. By the way, for audience, please make sure that mute yourself when you attend the seminar, and plus please don't share your screens. So, Uli, now our questions for you. By the way, is there an interesting question from the audience, Frat, through chat before we start our
not
question?
yet. No questions yet.
Okay, perfect. We have enough. So the thing is, I'm wondering, Ullrich, how was your work generally affected by the coronavirus? Your business that you
own. Well, there's only one word for it, and you can say it's a disaster. Basically, when we looked at our business 2 months ago, we were having a fantastic 2019, and January and February 2020 were the best month we ever had in our company history. And you need to understand how we work. The way we work is on a success-based model. So whenever there's demand, whenever there's people searching for hotels on Google and Trivago, we connect hotels. And if hotels make money, we make money. So we can always say, if we make money, hotels make money too, right? So that's always a good sign. But if demand drops, we also lose money. So we earn much less. And when I looked at numbers in March, in the first 2 weeks, I was already a little bit concerned, but we were still seeing trends of like -20%, -30%. And I thought, okay, that's not nice, but we can survive. But with the 14th of March, and literally I remember myself because I was in the US and I was flying back from the US. A day later, Trump was calling out the travel ban. And then within Europe, between the 13th and the 15th of March, most of the stuff closed down. And we could see a drop in our business in 97%. So literally my business, from one day to the other, we lost 97% revenue from one day to the other. And you can imagine, if you're a business, and by the way, I know that many hotels are facing exactly the same situation. So our numbers are pretty much parallel to hotel numbers because hotels are closing down. Nobody's traveling anymore. So we are all in one boat, right? We are all sitting in the same boat here, and we're looking at dramatic decreases.
Perfect. What kind of strategy do you follow with your staff? If you want, you can. I mean, if you don't want to answer, you don't need to answer. But really, we are wondering, because many people are facing same situation. And in our business, we all know that the biggest cost are staff. So, what did you do?
And it's exactly the same situation for us. And this is really what we are looking at. We are currently, and the way I interpret the situation is, okay, basically money has stopped circulating, right? So there's no demand, so there's no money coming in. That means hotels cannot spend money with us, so there's no money coming to us. There's basically nobody spends any money currently, right? And economy is heavily depending on money circulating from A to B to C and back. So this is not happening anymore. So what's currently obviously the situation is that we are all stuck on our fixed cost, right? So basically we have to pay our staff, we have to pay our people, we have to do the same thing. And now we're looking into different scenarios in different countries, right? Because different countries have different supports. If you look at Germany, where my company with most of the employees is based, thank God, I have to say that in Germany we have a very strong support by the government. In Germany, we have a system called short labor. So you can basically put people on a reduced salary for a certain amount of time, and they also work less. And the good thing is that the government decided.
But does government pay the rest of their salary when they are working less?
And they even put emergency situations in there, though usually the government pays parts of that. And in today's situation, the government agreed to pay almost everything. So literally, we can reduce our labor cost in the short run by almost 85%, and still have our people available. We have a very committed staff, and that's something I'm very, very grateful, because we talk to all of our staff. I mean, literally my last 10 days was individual discussions with each team member to find a solution for each individual person, where I think it's important, because every employee has worries, right? I mean, it's the same with all your employees. Everyone is worried currently. And I think it's very important, because when I look at my company for the last 8 years, yes, we worked with roughly 2,500 hotels. And we are very proud that we have so many hotels signed up. And it was very hard work. But it was much harder for me to build a team of 60 people in those 8 years. And for me, the team is the most important. I mean, don't get me wrong, customers are important too, but the team is the basis for providing good service. So we put a lot of effort into dealing with our people currently, and that's what 80% of my time goes into. And we're trying to find a solution for each one of them, and thank God the government supports us, so we are able to reduce our costs. But if still revenue goes down 97%, and if your costs go down by 85%, there's still 12% missing, right? And and that's something we need to cover. So. And that's the same problem for many hotels. I see the same problem for many hotels, that they have to shut down. And now the question is, how much support do you get by your government? Look at America, look to the US. In the US, you don't get any support. We have partners in America, marketing agencies, similar like Hotel Linkage. They literally told us last Sunday, one agency told us, look, we fired 50% of our staff, and another agency went bankrupt within 1 week. And that's the situation, because the government doesn't give anything. So yes, we are relying in every country on different regulations. I also have a company in Spain, and in Spain, support of the government is existing, but also not 85%, but only 50%. And that's a core difference, right, on how well companies can survive.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, and the situation as it is, everyone has to look for liquidity, right? This is what the scenario of today is. Everyone needs to look for liquidity. The money you have on your bank today is covering for the time until the whole business picks up again. So for me, it's quite simple, because usually if your business is in trouble, there's a reason for it, right? You might have made bad decisions, maybe demand or whatever has changed. But this crisis is not a crisis anyone is responsible for. It's a crisis that is not happening because you are having a bad product or bad clients. It's because everyone is affected. That means there's no need to reconsider your business model. There is no need to reconsider what you do. What you've done, if you've done a good job in the past, you will do a good job in the future. The only thing is, we need to get into the future. We need to survive the time between now and day X when the whole business starts again. And in this time, everyone needs liquidity. That also means that obviously, for example, hotels keep their money together and they don't pay bills to us, and they might not pay bills to someone else. And then all of a sudden, people stop paying bills to each other, right? Everyone keeps their liquidity, and that's the best recommendation I have, is keep your liquidity, right? And then we need to get through this, and hopefully business is picking up. And when you look at China, there are some small signs where we can see that maybe it is coming back in 2 to 3 months. Personally, I think it's more than 6 months. See, everyone needs to have a plan to get through that time. And this is more a financial planning rather than a product or anything else.
Yeah. Thank you, Uli. So we have many questions, so we will keep asking those questions. So Fırat, any question that you want to ask through chat to Uli, or do you have your own question?
Yes, we have a couple of them. Let me quickly, briefly ask them to Uli. Şahin Bey asks from Fethiye Ölüdeniz, says, what is going to happen to big hotels in the future?
By the way, if Şahin Bey wants, he can unmute himself and open his camera and join and ask his question to Uli himself.
Yeah, anytime.
Yeah, generally speaking, obviously we talk about big hotels, we talk about hotel chains, and we talk about smaller hotels, right? I think smaller hotels, and regardless what business you have, in the end, the companies with the most cash on the bank will survive. So if you were, and funnily, I mean, we did a podcast in German, unfortunately, 3 months ago, and we were talking about digitalization and hotels in the current times. And I said, look, a lot of hotels haven't invested a lot of money in digitalization and obviously in cost-saving activities because business was running so well and people were earning money. But I always say, like, in 7 fat years, you have to put money aside for 7 bad years. And 2 months ago, nobody was even remotely thinking about a financial crisis. And in this podcast, I was saying, look, guys, I see a problem because many hotels are not using that money to get prepared for bad times. I listened to that podcast yesterday and I was like, wow, now we are in a financial crisis and people are now struggling. And I think the people who did a good job in the past, who were taking profits aside on the bank account, who were investing strategically in digitalization and were able to reduce their cost structure, I think those hotels will have a benefit. We have a lot of hotels that were able to shift a lot of business away from OTAs into their website and saving 5-6% profit on this towards OTAs. And those hotels, I think, have a bigger chance than hotels that haven't done so in the past. So I believe it's not about big and small. It's more about what have you done correctly in the last years. And if you were not managing your money and your cost structure properly in good years, you might have a problem in bad years. I can see that in the hotel industry, there's a lot of money was thrown into the industry. And in the end, big hotels are usually owned by investors, right? They're usually not privately owned. So if they're owned by investors, they are now heavily depending on those people. How much money do they have and how much money are they willing to put in? We personally, I spoke also with hotel chains. I spoke to some bigger companies in the States, and they are having massive trouble. And there are expectations that some major hotel chains might go bankrupt in the next month. So that's dramatic.
Are those big chains that we know, or?
Well, we talk about the big names and not about the small names. Yeah. So I don't want to spread any rumors, right? Because I have no details about individual companies, but I know companies that work with these companies, and payment schedules and open invoices are significant, and it's not easy.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see how someone like Donald Trump would react if a big American hotel chain might go bankrupt. Let's see how that's going to work.
Yeah, that's interesting, really.
Yeah, Trump says America needs to get back to work, but we will see how America will. Yeah, we will see what's going to get back.
I mean,
Yeah? If you work with 2 million people dying on the street, I'm not sure how who's going to do the work then. Yeah, but that's a different, more of a moral kind of question in that part. And I'm not
Exactly.
And I'm not here to talk about morals and ethics. That's not my job today.
So another question here.
Yeah.
Can we say that the hotels far from the city centers are more lucky? I think it's very depend on the country situation, but the main thing that, as far as I understand, sorry, Uli, I mean, just there are a lot of questions. For that reason, I want to do this as quickly as possible. There will be increase in local business. Every authorities are agree on that. So it's really depending on your hotel's location, the city, the segments that you are working on. But as we were discussing for the last 3 webinar, you need to be prepared for the local segments.
Yes.
And mostly preparing your website, it's one of the most important tools. And then the OTAs, the local OTAs that will bring you local business.
Yeah.
So, Frat, another question from the chat box?
Yes, quick one from Beysun Güneri. According to an optimistic scenario, if everything gets better in July, can tourism businesses recover?
By the way, Beysun is, sorry, Beysun is in Antalya University, or Akdeniz University. Beysun, if you are available, you can unmute yourself and give us also some insights from the how academic worlds are working on this crisis, or do they do anything regards that?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Hello everyone. I'm Beysun from Akdeniz University. I'm a lecturer. And now we are at home. Everybody is at home. As you know, all the universities are closed for this semester. We are not going to start anymore. And now we started distance education, distance learning. So we are preparing materials and loading them, and trying to do something to educate our students. But I don't know if it will work better or not, but we do our best for this. And we really wonder about the future of the tourism business, because as I live in Antalya, it's very important, you know, Antalya is the capital of the tourism, as you know, and all the hotels are closed, and there are very pessimistic scenarios. But I really wonder if an optimistic scenario happens, if everything gets better, can business can tourism
recover in couple months? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
well, yeah, I know that I'm here to give you hope, right? But first of all, before I give you hope, I need to take the bad side of the story. And I think if you know what bad things could happen, you can automatically conclude the opportunities, right? So let me nevertheless still start more with the downsides. The downsides, and again, talking about it from a German perspective, and I know that German travelers are hugely important for you guys. Obviously, you get a lot of business through tour operators, right? Tour operators, nevertheless, are the companies with the lowest liquidity rate in the market. So they are the companies with the lowest cash. So I mean, we already saw Thomas Cook going bankrupt last year, and there's a big chance that there might be more tour operators going down and bad banks going down over the next years. So those partners might not be the right partners for you anymore in future to deliver your business. But nevertheless, it means people might still want to travel, right? So if the tour operators don't pick up this business, who's going to pick up the business, and will it pick up? So I believe that, again, the online segment, the OTAs, and potentially through Google and platforms like that, you might get even more clients coming in than others, but you need to be ready. You need to have the infrastructure to get there. And I guess it's time to talk to Erhan about that, how to get better on that part, if you're not already done so. And the next question is then, okay, who's going to travel? I believe that there will be less groups. I think there, and this is all personal guessing here, right? But I think there will be less groups. People are not willing to travel in groups. You saw that people might even have problems flying because they feel uncomfortable sitting on a plane, right? They might go by car. So that's again going towards more domestic business, and maybe less Germans travel to Turkey. They might do their holiday in Germany this year, right? Which might be a positive impact for German leisure hotels and not for Turkish leisure hotels. So that is again a downside. So maybe focus more on Turkey and people who are in close proximity. And then yes, and then we need to see if July is actually early enough. I think currently nobody can make a proper estimation there. It's quite simple. If infection rates go down, and if the things we do currently are having an impact, it could be that there's a last minute boom, right? Because people want to go on their holiday. But again, there are too many ifs and maybes where I'm like, okay, be ready, yeah, have your strategy ready, but I think I'm not an oracle. I can't tell you, nobody knows. I'm not a wizard. I'm not the Wizard of Oz who can tell you what's happening in the next future. Mm-hmm. I think one thing we need to consider, and that's maybe also not something we need to consider, that a lot of people will have a significant reduction on their disposable income, specifically people with lower incomes. So if you're a hotel that is targeting, let's say, if you're a 2 or 3 star hotel in Antalya, where people go for, again, from Germany, for example, on a low, let's say, cheap last minute holiday, those people might even have less disposable income and not going to do any holiday at all. But again, money with people with cash, so rich people, they might just wait for the travel ban to be lifted to finally travel again. Personally, and that's again an educated guess, I believe that 4 or 5 star hotels might have less trouble once the travel ban is lifted than hotels that are targeting a lower income group, because lower income groups might not be able to do any holiday and any travel in the foreseeable future. People with money, again, okay, they lose money as well, but they still have enough money left, right?
Thank you, Uli. I think it's a clear picture for all of us. There is uncertainty in the future, but we are, as you said, there are a lot of if and maybes, but we need to make our strategy ready. So, Uli, yesterday, while we are speaking about this webinar, also you told us that you have some news from the China or the Far East. Can you please share us your knowledge about the Far East? What's going on there? Is the business start to get pick up there?
Yeah, it's basically from China. We don't really have data ourselves, but I mean, I spoke to several companies who have, there are also companies like STR and Chi, and they are publishing numbers, so they are publicly available too. And the good news is, as many people have already seen, is that China is having a recovery, right? So China is seeing a recovery. I'm still hesitant on those news, right? Because we don't know how much is actually connected to the actual pandemic and how much is really free travel. I personally think that's another 1 to 2 weeks to go. We had a longer discussion also with Google on this topic 2 days ago. And even Google told us, look, yeah, we do see stuff, but it's far too early to make a prediction. So they told us, look, we have all the data. I mean, they have all the data, right? They know exactly what's going on. And even Google says, too early to make a conclusion, but there are, let's say, positive signs from China. Middle East and Far East, I don't know, because this is where it's just started. But in China, we can already see that 80 to 90% of the hotels have opened again. That's a good sign. That means they expect business. But again, business is only domestic. So, and I think that's the truth of the day is whenever things pick up again, 90 to 95% of the business will be domestic. And it's a logical thing, because when you look at pandemic plans, and if you look at how countries have to control a pandemic, international travel is one of the most important factors, and also where you put the highest restrictions to avoid a pandemic. So I believe that the international travel restrictions will be in place for much longer. you might be able to leave your house, you might be even be able to travel, but you're only allowed to travel within your country. So if we want to make money in the future, I think domestic travel is the core, let's say, factor to look at for the next 6 to 9 months.
So, Uli, I know that you have very good relation with Trivago and Google. So, how are the requests from those channels? I mean, how are the search about tourism? Is there? We know that the conversion is very low, but how are the search for future?
Well, it's. I mean, I can take. We work with one of the biggest hotel chains in Germany, right? And they have around 150 hotels, and they usually spend around 8,000 to 10,000 euros a day on online marketing campaigns, meaning buying traffic from Google, from Trivago, and all these platforms. And in March, I mean, in January and February, they were even up to 15,000 euro a day. In March, in the first 2 weeks, it went down to 8,000 euro a week. In the last 10 days, we are down to 300 euros a month. That means, and they want to buy traffic, but there is no traffic, right? There is simply no traffic.
Yeah.
So there's no demand. And the 300 euro is, yes, these are searches for the future, like up to October and November, but it's very small, and people are very careful because obviously they don't want to book something because they don't know how long the whole travel restrictions are. So nobody wants to book a room for June because nobody knows if they can actually travel. So they just, right? So what I expect, nevertheless, and what I actually expect, and that's maybe the good news, is I believe that once the travel ban is lifted, that we have a strong uplift in bookings and immediate bookings. It's a little bit, by the way, and this happens, by the way, every year during Christmas, it happens. Every year we have the same situation. During Christmas, people stop booking and conversion rates and traffic goes down. And then in January, all of a sudden, at the beginning of January, bookings go up. There's always a little spike for a week because the week before people didn't book. So in 1 week, you get the bookings for the last 2 weeks. So it all gets compressed. And I think the same thing will happen with Corona. Once the travel ban is lifted, all this demand that has stopped over the last month will kind of like come up in a spike, but it will not be the total demand that we lost, right? If we lost 100% demand, maybe 30% comes at a later stage. And then we have a huge boom, maybe for 1 or 2 weeks, and then it will go down to a normal level. So that's what I would expect. And again, if the travel ban is lifted soon and the summer season is hit, maybe we're gonna make it for the summer season, which is obviously very, very important for many hotels in Turkey, I guess, in the leisure area, in Antalya and so on. But again, very hard to tell. But I would expect a big spike once the travel ban is lifted.
So, Frat, we have another 15 minutes left since we have started like around 5-6 minutes late. So, is there any question? I saw question. Most of them are answered during our conversation with Uli. If you think that there is no new question, can you please ask your question? By the way, let me mute all again.
Just
sorry.
Okay. Yes, I'm back. So just one small one. Uli, you talked about German people coming to Turkey, and we had just one quick one from Balıktay. Says, what do you think German people traveling usually to Turkey, which is the biggest market for Turkey, like you know, and will they come to Turkey for 2020?
Yeah, as I said, I think this is something where I'm not too hopeful because I believe that people will have issues in traveling internationally and going on an airplane. It's something that is specifically on the short term, like this summer, might be something where even the governments might not even allow it, right, up to a certain extent. So this is something, this could hurt you, and that might also then affect people, travelers from Russia and other markets. So I think for 2020, that's going to be an issue. I think for 2021, this can turn around again, and because people forget, and usually within 6 to 12 months, people forget, and then things are all of a sudden all great again. So I think for this year, I don't want to get your hopes up, because, and I know my German fellow countrymen, they are very careful, and yeah, so it might be, and then if they travel, it might also be that they say, look, maybe I travel to Turkey, but I might not want to go into a hotel with 1,000 people. I might prefer maybe going into an apartment or like a small boarding house or something that is where I'm not together with so many people.
Yeah.
So, and that's coming back to the question with the big hotels. I think that's a problem for the big hotels. One recommendation I can give is tell people that you're really taking all hygienic and all security and safety measurements that are available, that people feel comfortable. Yeah, Germans want to feel comfortable. That's important.
Yeah, and I think also it's very important that, as you said, hotel need to take all security and hygienic disinfection measures, those things, but also they need to market about it, right? Because if people don't know that that hotel is clean and secure, then they may not want to travel there. So it's also important for them to market these measures after they take it. This is what I think. So, Uli, what are your? I know that there were a lot of suggestions during your speech, but what are your final suggestions to hoteliers during this crisis? If you make it 1, 2, 3, what would you say to hoteliers?
Yeah. Well, as I said, I think it's not the time to get crazy about changing too many things, right? Because some people said, okay, we need to have creative ideas and do this and this and this. Sometimes it's about, remember, this is not a crisis made by you. Everyone is affected. And if there's no demand, you will not make money. So rather than changing everything that you've potentially done very well before, do what you do and don't get crazy about changing everything, right? Don't put everything into question. What I think is important is maybe you have more time now, right? Because then less guests, so you have more time. So what I can recommend is use this time to get ready for day X. That's really important, because one day the business will pick up again. What we are currently doing with our clients is we sit down with them and we do workshops and we say, look, what can we do to prepare for that day once the business picks up? It might be in a month, it might be in 3 months, but we need to have an action plan for that day. We don't need an action plan for the next 3 months. We need an action plan for the day when it starts. And what are we going to do? For example, one thing is get your technology in place, get your website ready. Maybe, we have so many hotels over the last, let's say 12 months, there were so many things where hotels said, I don't have time for this. I don't have time for that. Now you have the time. So do the stuff you always wanted to do, right? I have hotels that said, I always wanted to do a newsletter. I always wanted to set up my social media website. I wanted to do my Facebook website. So now is the time to do the stuff you always wanted to do, and that weren't important enough. Second thing is really get ready and understand how the market ticks. So if, like Aaron, like you said, if you are depending on segments that are clearly not picking up in the short run, for example, like group business, MICE business, think about what other segments might be more worthwhile. So like I said, focus on the online traveler. Focus on the fact that maybe you're not want to go down the road with Booking and Expedia, but maybe through your own website, getting informed about what alternatives you have to drive business to your website. You have time, inform yourself, right? And get ready. And I'm sure you have the right people with Hotel Linkage to give you the right support. And number 3 is keep your money together, right? It's the more cash you have on your bank account and the longer it stays there, the better it is. And of course you have to pay your bills. If you don't pay your bills to Erhan, he won't be able to survive, and then everything goes down, right? So, obviously you need to find a way with your service suppliers to make this work. But in the end, we are all in this together. I think we all have to agree that we're going to have less after this crisis. We all have to agree that right now it's tough for everyone. But if one domino piece starts falling, everyone might fall. So it's important that we sit down together and discuss what we can do together to get through this. Like I did with my employees. I went to my employees and I said, look, I cannot pay you the salaries I want anymore. What can you give? Because if we don't survive, you all lose your job. But if you give something, and if everyone gives 500 euro, right, we might have a few thousand euros saved. And if we get through this crisis, then it's time to give back. So everyone needs to give something for everyone to survive. And I think it's a great time for, as a community, to work together and to be honest and look at our numbers and say, hey, right? But we need to agree, it's not the time to be greedy. It's not the time to think about myself, because if you survive and nobody else does, your business is going to die as well.
Yeah. So one last thing that I really wonder, as you said, you are working on success base with hotels, but there are a lot of bill that you and your clients has already paid to the Google and Trivago and Tripadvisor. So does Google or Trivago or Tripadvisor, do they do anything to support you or your clients financially, or do they keep asking for the money?
Well, the situation is like this. We get an invoice from these people every month, right? So we have an invoice from Google and from Trivago and from Tripadvisor for February when business was still up. So we still have to pay for the traffic for February, right? Which was business that created revenue. And but I also need to charge my clients for that traffic. And my clients currently can't pay for business they already received because they're low on liquidity. So that means, in a simple fact, I have hotels owing me 1.5 million euro, and I have to pay, let's say, 1.3 million to Google and Trivago and Tripadvisor. So if my clients don't pay me, I can't pay them. So it's a bit of a stalemate, right? We are all stuck in that situation. We're like, okay, and if I pay them, then my liquidity goes down. And if the hotels don't pay me, I'm bankrupt. So it's kind of like a domino effect. And when I think about it, like I said at the very beginning, it's coming down to the people with the most cash on the bank account, right? Because the people with the highest amount of cash on the bank account will survive longest. Let's say the guys of Google, Booking, Expedia, Trivago, they actually have a good cash balance, right? I mean, you just need to look into their balance sheet. You can see that their liquidity reserve is quite high. So theoretically, Google could say, look, we have all the cash on the bank. We can help MyHotelShop to potentially survive a little bit longer, right? Because they don't need the money, but I need it. But obviously they are all businesses, right? They're not healthcare and they're not Samaritans, right? So of course they want to have their money. And of course they ask us to pay. But they have a certain understanding, and there's a very good relationship between us and them, that they have a good understanding of our problems. But of course, I mean, I'm a businessman and I know that money rules the world. And I also know that Google works with, 1,000 partners like us. And if and literally they told us, each one of them called them. It's not just me, all of them called them. And all of them asked for delayed payment or no payment. And they only have a certain, and their problem is they cannot treat me that way and the other guy the other way. They have to treat everyone under the same rules. And that's the complication of it, right? I mean, so I know that these guys work on scenarios for us, and hopefully we find a scenario that, because again, they also know if we go down, everyone goes down. Again, I think Google is maybe a company who can afford it easier than most of the hotels and us. But again, they won't give money away for free, and they would be stupid if they do so. And if they donate money, I think it makes more money to donate money into a fund rather than to individuals. So let's see how this goes. But I just saw the one comment in the chat: cash is king, and that's maybe the motto of the day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
thank you.
We have one more question from Coşkun Bey. He has a nice hotel in Alanya, and he asks, we have postponed our season by 1 month. Unfortunately, we don't have much hope. Is this decision correct for small hotels? What do you think about this postponement of hotel openings?
hard to say. I mean, what does it mean to postpone a season? I mean,
like they are gonna open in May, they are gonna open in June now.
So these are seasonal
I mean,
hotels, Uli. So
Yeah.
they are not
seasonal
open.
hotels, so they're closed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
So they're closed. I mean, what's the point in opening if nobody can come, right? I mean, obviously that's an obvious decision, right? I mean, if nobody can come, then don't open the hotel. And yes, that's the right decision. But again, you might sit down in a month's time and you might have to postpone another month. That's the situation currently. Nobody can predict, right? And this is what makes it so difficult for you guys, because it's so much uncertainty, and that's maybe and uncertainty is always poison for economy, right? That's It's always the same, and there's also very little risk you can take. You could say, okay, let's open and maybe take the risk, okay, but then you have to put all your labor down. I would currently be a little bit more conservative. I would say July, maybe August, yes, there's a chance, but I would say currently May and June is from my personal understanding, how I'm not a researcher and I'm not a medicine guy, but I'm reading a lot about pandemics and stuff like that in my private time. And what I can see currently, I think it's very unlikely that business picks up in May or June.
Okay. Thank you, Uli. So is there any important question that we missed to ask Uli? Fırat, Caner?
No.
Okay, we cover everything. Yeah, and we also almost finish our time. So if you want to wrap up or if you want to say anything, Uli.
Yeah, all I say is, like, I mean, one important thing, and I don't want to get too philosophical, but of course, I mean, any bad time is depending on two very important factors, and one is hope, right? And hope we can give to each other, and optimism. And I'm a hopeless optimist. I'm always believe that we can get through. Yeah, maybe on a lower level. Yeah, 3 steps back, but 4 steps forward, right? This is always important to have that optimism, and I think in times like that, to keep optimism, it's important to have humor, right? To laugh once in a while, to make a joke once in a while, even though it's tough. But I think that's a very important mentality, yeah. And I know that Turkish people are always people who are very positive and very friendly. So I think with that mentality, it's important. And the second thing is that yeah, you need to work as a community, as one team, right? I know you're all competitors potentially, but at the same time, only we are all in this together. And this is a specific situation, a special situation, and it's important to stay together, to stick together, and make plans, yeah, and get through this together, and don't lose hope on the way. As I said, I think we don't need to, with all the bad news, we don't need to be completely pessimistic. Any crisis in the past recovered. Travel always recovered. Everyone wants to travel. Travel is the strongest engine of the world economy, and it will recover, no doubt. It's just a matter of time. And usually, like anything in the world, and the world went through far worse things like world wars and other bad diseases in the past, the world always got better out of it. But we only can get better out of it if we stay positive and if we stay good with each other and if we don't start killing each other. That's maybe the most important thing. So, and that's maybe the message. If anyone has any questions or if anyone wants to contact me, I mean, you can obviously contact me on LinkedIn or any of these social profiles and send me emails, and I'm more than happy to stay in touch with people one-on-one. Sure. And other than that, Erhan, thanks a lot for inviting me. It was great.
Surely. Thank you for joining, really. Yeah. By the way, if anyone wants to reach Uli, they can also send me, and I think if it's okay to share your contact information with them.
Absolutely.
So thank you, Uli, once again for joining this webinar, and thank you to everyone who joined this webinar, and Fırat and Caner also, thank you very much for your contribution. So just one announcement for next week. Next Friday, we will host Miss Denizci from Hong Kong Polytechnic University. So she will give us information mostly about Far East. Uri, that would be nice if you want to join as well, if you want to update your information about Far East, because she has, I believe she has a lot of information about the situation in Far East. So see you next week, and thank you everyone for joining us. So have a great day.
Thank you very much.
Have a great weekend. Take care.
you very
Bye
much.
bye.
Bye.